Hey there everyone, Pal here, and welcome back. We're talking Star Citizen again, and today, well, I need to make a correction video for the one I put out last Sunday. Correct a large error in it. I still think the overall message, I'm going to repeat the overall message, but, well, before we get into that, footage in the background, this is Horizon Zero Dawn PS4 exclusive, well, PlayStation exclusive for 4.5 or 4 Pro, whatever you want to call it. I'm liking it. I think it's actually pretty darn good. Now, that comes with a big caveat. There's very little unique or new gameplay in this. The scenario, the world, the lore, the location, all of that is quite unique, quite new. This kind of post-apocalyptic but also tribal primal world with robotic dinosaurs is really neat, and it's probably the main elements that's got me hooked onto this game. It's probably the largest reason I like it. There's just some really cool backstory going on here. There's a lot of unknowns and learning as I've played through the first 4 hours of the game so far. But mechanically, in terms of what it doesn't do anything new at all that I can think of. It's got a lot of Far Cry elements in it, from the map and the world design. How you upgrade your storage capacity is straight up taken out of Far Cry, but that was also kind of taken out of Red Dead. In fact, there's Red Dead elements in this where you'll be riding along and you'll just come across like these random things happening that don't really matter at all. But they're just kind of these little unique things that happen going off, people getting attacked or something. You'll see one or two of them in the gameplay here, depending on how long this video goes. There's a little bit of Uncharted in there with how you parkour around. There's some climbing and stuff. It's good. It looks amazing. Even running at 30 FPS, which is a bit of a disappointment, but I'm giving it a little bit of a pass. A little bit of a pass because of how good it does look. Mainly, there's no way for it to look this good and run at 60 FPS on PlayStation 4. I think most computers would have a tough time running this at above 60 FPS without being a $1,200 computer. Anything below that would have trouble, because this game just does look amazing. It has an awesome color palette that runs the full spectrum. There's a lot of bright, beautiful reds, greens, oranges, all over the place. The character models, the facial animations are a little off. They're in that uncanny valley. There's no doubt about that, but it's still it looks great. I'm going to go so far, and a lot of people are going to consider this blasphemy. I'm enjoying this more than I'm enjoying Zelda. Zelda, I don't want to go too far into Breath of the Wild. I'm only about 5 hours into that. Breath of the Wild is good, and I don't want to say, like, I'm enjoying this because Breath of the Wild sucks. No, Breath of the Wild is still, from what I've played so far, like an 8.5 out of 10. But Breath of the Wild, while it has a few interesting gameplay mechanics to it that are unique to it, that aren't from other genres like they are with Horizon Zero Dawn, the world in Breath of the Wild feels barren. And you can clearly tell it was held back by the hardware. They would have liked to have it more densely and lushly populated, and it's just not there because it couldn't be rendered out. So, yeah, this isn't to bash on on Zelda. I just, like, Zelda would be like an 8.5 right now, and Horizon would probably be a 9 for me, though it doesn't do anything unique. So, that's what's going on in the background. Okay, let's talk about the video today. So, last week I did a video where I talked about why CIG was justified in the creation of more ships. And in that video I made a big mistake in terms of my numbers, though I think when I explain it today, hopefully you'll see that it actually doesn't change the argument at all. It's not even really an argument, I don't think. For reference purposes, that video is going to be linked in the description down below. I'm going to take that video down. It's just going to be unlisted because it does have a glaring mistake in it. So in that video, basically, one of the core elements I did for justifying is there's 3 major points for why they're making more ships. The first and foremost was there is honesty behind the point that they're doing it because it does generate revenue for them, and they're going to need money in order to finish this game up, or there's a fair chance they're likely to need more money in order to finish this game up. And I went through and was basically just trying to demonstrate that in order to create a video game of this scale, this scope, with the graphics and everything they're trying to do, it's expensive. And one part of that I broke down was a rough ballpark number of the average salary and how much they've spent in terms of salaries out of the $144 million they've raised. In doing so, I said they have roughly 600 employees at CIG. That number's pretty far off. What we most know is, and this will be linked in the description down below, the November letter from the chairman video, or letter of the chairman the November letter from the chairman directly says they have 377 employees in the company at that time. Now, I did, in my numbers, it says 377 employees actively working on developing the game. I was more including things like secretaries, the cleaning services, and all of that in it. But for more specific numbers, for a more like focused number, let's go with this. And then I also did $40,000 base salary for a video game designer. And again, I think that number is a really low ballpark. So if you look in the description down below, again, you're going to find 2 or 3 links. I've done some research trying to find the average video game designer salary. And it seems to be, in the United States at least, roughly $85,000 a year, between like $82,000 and $85,000, depending on where you go. Now, this is within the United States. It also runs the gambit from about $45,000 on the low end up to about $112,000, $110,000 on the high end is where it goes. So the point is that $40,000 number I used was actually was pretty much on the low end. This is only for the United States, though. As we discovered, the largest portion of the people working on it are in the Frankfurt office. I tried to find numbers of average salary within German game development. I didn't have much success. I found a few websites, but they were in German. It seems to be somewhere, after I do the euro to US dollar conversion, somewhere around 55,000, 52,000. So more than the 40,000 number, but definitely not the 85,000 that it is here in the United States. And I didn't have any success finding anything about the UK numbers. I still think, though, if we stick with the $40,000 number mark, it's still a low ballpark, going to come in underneath. So we're not overestimating is the point. We're underestimating going forward. So let's take that number and we're going to break it down a little bit. So in the year 2017, we're going off that November monthly report, he had 377 employees. It kind of grew throughout the year, but we'll stick with that 377 people. $40,000 a year is just over $15 million, $15,800,000, $80,000 in terms of salaries paid out. Obviously, that's just for 2016. They were not always at that size. They've been gradually scaling up. In order to account for that increasing employee count, what I basically then did was, going back from 2016 to 2015, I took that number and I reduced it by 33%. I figured let's say they grew by 33% over that year. So 33% of let me get my actual numbers here so I don't screw this up again. So if we take that 15 million, reduce it by 33 million, we're basically down to 10 million. That number's pretty good. That's for 2015. From 2015 to 2014, we then reduced again by 33%. We're at about 6.6 million. And then for 2013, we're at about $4.4 million. At that point, I stopped. I figured with the Kickstarter finishing in November of 2012, and it was late November of 2012, there was really no reason to calculate those numbers in. They would be minuscule overall, and we're lowballing everything here. So if we add up the 15 million, this 10 million, 6.6, 4.4, we come out to $36 million, ballpark-ish in salaries, using a lowball number again of $40,000 have been paid out so far. Again, there's some not discrepancies, but if we look forward, one other number we should calculate into this a little bit is there is employer-paid taxes on this. This varies from state to state, but if we just look at the federal tax on it in the United States, it is going to be roughly 7.5%. Certain states they have to pay more, certain they don't. I'm actually guessing they're in Austin, Texas, because Austin probably is. I know Texas has very good employer tax rates, so there might not be any additional on top of the federal one. So if we take that 36 million, multiply it by 7.5%, that's 2.7 million. Now that would be if all the employees were here in the United States. Obviously, we just discussed many of them are in Frankfurt, and many of them, well, not many, but some of them are in the UK. I had no luck finding those numbers. So we're somewhere between 36 and $40 million in salaries using this lowball number. But as we've gone over, and I've said many, many times, this is a lowball number. This is using 377 employees, and that's saying $40,000. Realistically, let's not even say they're the 85,000. Let's ball in the middle. Does 55-ish million not seem possible? Because if we did the exact same numbers and multiplied it by the $85,000 a year, we're actually closer to $73 million. Well, you could basically just almost a little more than double this number we have here. So the 36 million, if we a little more than doubled that, that would put us at 72. Well, that would be doubling it. It would be a little bit more above that because it's 85,000, not 80,000. So it would probably be approaching 78,000 or 78 million, give or take.
Hope you enjoy it.
Again, these numbers are ballpark, all of that, and this doesn't take into account costs of buildings, the buildings that they're in. They are most likely leasing those. Some of the buildings are going to be pretty large. The building in LA might not be large, but it's probably not cheap. I can't imagine leasing a building in Los Angeles is cheap. The power bills on these buildings are going to be extreme. They have a lot of computers with a lot of power draw, not to mention any additional servers and things they're running, so that's going to be expensive. All of the hardware they're running on, or at least the vast majority of the hardware, the computers that you see the developers developing the game on, are going to mostly be leased. They're not buying those because they only need them for 3 to 5 years. So they're not buying these computers that are very expensive computers for what they use to do the programming. These computers are commonly running $3,000 video cards. They're the video cards that you don't get on the consumer market for the most part. So those computers are not cheap that they're leasing. We have things like the motion cap that they did, which they likely didn't buy their own motion cap. They're probably in LA. They're probably renting out or buying out by the day, by the week, in order to do motion cap with a developed studio that's what they do. But again, that stuff's not cheap. The head scans, the facial scans, and all of that for the character customization, that stuff's not cheap. Voice lines, the voice lines from Mark Hamill and everything, that's not cheap, though it's not millions upon millions of dollars, but Mark Hamill probably got at least 6 figures for it. 2 alien languages designed, that's not cheap. The point I was just trying to make, there's no $144 million sitting around for this game. There's probably not even 100. They've probably spent 70 to 80 million of the revenue they've brought in already in developing this game. That doesn't mean they need more right now, but clearly we can see we're probably realistically 2 to 3 years off. And with the studio running at the size it is, with some big expenses, if they run into a few hurdles, that $144 million might not be enough to actually finish the game. You can look at some other big AAA games that aren't even nearly of this scale, and they run the gamut anywhere from like $80-ish million, with some of the really, really big ones running upwards of $180 million, but somewhere in that $80 to $120 million range is kind of common for a big AAA game, without going into all the scale that is going into Star Citizen, the planetary tech, and all this creation stuff that is going on. And that was really all I was trying to get across. The money is finite, so yes, they are making ships in order to extend how much money they have, in order to give them more leeway in the development of this game, that if they do run into some headaches, some hiccups, something that slows them down, they don't run out of financing before they're able to finish the game. Obviously, they could do third-party stuff. I know some people say they're working with Intel and everything. I don't think Intel's throwing a whole lot of money at them. Any work they're doing with Intel, I'm going to guess, is more about driver support, optimization support, things along the line with DirectX 12. Intel's not going to be advertising this game and recouping a whole lot of money. I don't buy into that so much, though. If you have information, go ahead and link it to me. I'll read up on it. But that's the beginning. There's also, though, 2 other good reasons. I mentioned at the beginning of this video 3 primary reasons. So number 1 is, yes, it does financially help them ensure they're going to have the funds to finish the game. That's probably the biggest one. But number 2, and actually this might actually be the biggest one. Number 2 is they are the primary driving force of content that we are going to be experiencing. No matter what it is, however you play this game, you're never going to be more than like 2-3 steps removed from a spaceship. Even if you're someone that wants to play as a hermit living on a farm down on some planet or something, the supplies you're going to be getting from the local distribution, whatever, are going to be coming in and going by spaceship. Anything that you sell to them and they get sold off planet is going to be coming and going by by spaceship. If you're on a space station and you're working as a trader or something, all of your customers are going to be coming and going from that space station with a spaceship. I'm going to have to really focus on saying that correctly. The goods are going to be coming and going by spaceship. Everything in this game, in no small point, is going to be revolving around the spaceship. So creating more ships just creates more content, further develops out the game, and that is probably actually the biggest reason they're making it. The financial one is probably number 2. And the third thing of why it's justified and why it's okay is a lot of the things that are holding up this game from really progressing on is not something that the artists, the 3D designers, and everything that are creating these ships have any effect on. It's things like the netcode, it's the background core programming. The artists, the 3D designers and stuff are not programmers. They're not writing the code for this game. So what the spaceships do is they give them work to do, things to work on to further progress the game, while everything else, the netcode and all the other backbone programming is being written, finalized. So it's not like them doing the ships is detracting from work getting done elsewhere. It's just adding more to the final product without subtracting anything. Hopefully that explains a lot. Was there some vitriol around this video, and I understand, like, I made a big mistake with my numbers. I completely grant that. But I got accused of hating on the game as being someone that really dislikes it. I'm not really sure where that comes from. I'm one of the bigger fans of the game. In fact, I need to make the decision here in the next day over if I'm going to be buying a Hurricane or not for the FTI, or FTI, the LTI insurance on and everything. I'm a big supporter of the game, but I do think that it's okay to ask some questions about it, to wonder about some of these things. Supporting it doesn't mean not critiquing it, not criticizing it, not thinking critically on it. I could sit here and I could just read the latest patch notes. I could go over the last around the verse and stuff, but there's enough videos out there that do that. I'd rather look into some of the deeper subjects that could go on with this. Alright, hopefully that clears some things up. Maybe this time I won't get yelled at all the time, but probably not. Until next time, though, this has been Paller. Thanks for watching.